Hello and welcome back to Vox Popcast, the weekly pseudo-academic roundtable of pop culture analysis with drinking and swearing. My name is Christopher Maverick, but you can call me Mav, and I am once again here with my co-hosts, Katya and Monica and Wayne. Hey guys, how's it going?
Hi.
Hey, Mav.
Hey. The end of the year, but we've already done our end of the year podcast.
We plan ahead. We know that the end of the year is coming, so we can do that.
Well, we had to do it. If you're eagle-eared, is eagle-ears a thing?
It is now.
Yeah, eagle-eared viewers will notice that Hannah's not here, so we had to do our Things You Missed podcast last week because she couldn't make this week's. Today, if you're listening to this on drop day, is December 30th, 2024, which means tomorrow's New Year's Eve, which means the end of the year is this week. So, Happy New Year, everybody. Or
you know what, though? To tie this all back together, we are going to be talking about a thing that came up on our Things You Missed podcast.
Oh.
Okay, yeah. Perfect.
Because we did say at the end of that episode, should we do an episode? And the answer is yes, we're going to do the episode. I'm making us all do the episode.
Yeah, we're doing it now. We did it.
Yeah, it's like I checked my New Year's resolution list off early. Doing it this year.
Is that how that works?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So, what is the topic, Monica? What are we doing?
It is my week. I describe this as the week where we talk about the trolley problem. It's also the week in which I make sure that we get to finally talk about Conclave, and in which I make sure that we also get to talk about Small Things Like These and some other movies that I really liked that I watched this week that also feature the trolley problem. So maybe the listeners,
or variations on the trolley problem, not necessarily the trolley problem itself, but you propose this as the very specific morality play of, do I do the wrong thing for the greater good, or do I,
do the selfish thing?
Do the selfish, but like hurt the greater good is kind of and you're theorizing there are suddenly a lot of movies that propose this,
right? But also that it's not a new topic. It's definitely something that I've seen a lot in media before, but it just kind of so happened that there are a lot of prestige dramas that I watched around awards season this year that have that topic in particular. So I thought maybe we could play What Would You Do? And talk about what makes these so interesting as movies, because a plot where you know that it's a 7-10 split, like, doesn't sound like it's going to be a lot of fun to go to the theater and watch. And yet these were absolutely the movies that I love this year, or I wouldn't have put them on my Things You Missed list, right?
You're seeing that.
I thought we'd start there.
There's like this news show that is like, What Would You Do? That is literally, putting people in, question of scruples type situations, and then seeing if they hire actors to have a couple arguing at the bar, and then the boyfriend being really abusive, just to see if people will step in to help the girlfriend. And then they will hire a different bunch of actors, and they'll bring in an abusive girlfriend with the boyfriend being berated, to see if people are less likely to help when it's a guy, or if it's two lesbians, or if it's two gay guys, or whatever. And they just do different combinations. And then they'll do the same thing where they'll have somebody spike a drink or something, or they'll have a child talking back to their parents. And
this is entertaining.
It is when it's Oscar bait and not when it's a reality TV show.
Yeah,
well, this is like a news show.
What is the appeal of? I don't know. I'm curious about what the appeal of that is.
Yeah,
and that's why I wanted to do the topic, is because I mean, this year a lot of the movies that we have in the running are that, but not the Dateline version. So I think maybe there's going to be spoilers for all of these movies, because the moral conundrum of what will you do doesn't always arise in the theatrical trailer or at the beginning of the films. There's also that
for all movies.
Yeah, spoilers for every movie ever. Especially Conclave.
Spoiler alert. So if you've not seen the films and you don't want to, I will try to put chapter breaks on this episode, but just in general, if you bail on this episode, please leave us a 5-star review on iTunes. Help us out. Hit
Don't
that
give
like
us
and
a
subscribe
7-10
button.
split.
Hit the like and subscribe button on YouTube. I've been trying to put shows up on YouTube again. So yeah, but help us out by liking and subscribing and stuff. But anyway, spoilers for every movie we talk about coming up. And so I guess you want to start with Conclave?
Yeah, of course I want to start with Conclave.
All right.
I did send the group chat a real headline last night, which said, "Is Conclave the Real Housewives?" That's another one. You should watch it. You should watch Conclave.
Yeah, this is the one where the tagline is, "It has a cunty pope," I believe.
Yes, cunty cardinals and a lot of
cunty cardinals.
Yeah,
it is Gossip Girl in the Vatican.
Okay, so that's an interesting one because you just said that, wondering if it matters if, like, it's going to be a trolley problem movie going in. And Enclave, I guess you don't, like, all from the promo material is, hey, this is the movie where we look inside the Vatican and we see how you pick a new pope when the pope dies. And that's what they tell you. But, like, the premise of the film essentially is that everyone in the running to be new pope sucks in one way or another. Like, some of them suck in more problematic ways than others, but none of them are perfect for the church. And it's sort of I don't want to see, I'm hesitant to say they're looking for the lesser of two evils, because they're not. They're just looking for here are 6 people, all of whom could be pope, but none of them are, the Catholic dogma thing of the Pope's infallible, and all of them very obviously are, some more so than others.
I'm not Catholic, but doesn't God just eventually tell them? Doesn't he pick God?
No, you vote very much in the same way that you might have a Democratic or Republican convention, like in the oldie time sense, in which everyone sits in a room together and puts together their majority rules ballots. And then you might need to go through multiple rounds until you actually reach what is the necessary majority of votes for somebody to secure the nomination.
If you remember, when we had the crazy 18 rounds of trying to select a House Speaker in the United States Congress, last year or 2 years ago, that's the movie. Is them voting, they vote and then nobody gets enough votes, and then they go and they meet and they talk about why this guy sucks, or why this guy sucks, or this guy's too liberal, this guy's too conservative. Oh, wait, it turns out there's a scandal. And there's a bunch of scandals. And one of the frontrunners is a guy who they just don't like because he's very much a fire and brimstone. We need to take rights away from women. We need to take rights away from Black people. That's one guy's whole platform. And he's got a bunch of support. So they're trying to get the more liberal, more progressive candidates to sort of drop out and coalesce around one candidate to not support that. And then they've got another guy. As say,
so where the trolley problem sort of comes in this particular movie is that obviously some people are incredibly vocal about the reasons that they may or may not be worthy of the Pope ship.
Popehood?
His Popehood?
I have no idea.
I like Pope ship just because to me it implies that there is a rocket ship for the Pope.
Yeah.
In his Pope-mobile.
So that he can go up to heaven and speak to God. That is correct. That is how this religion works.
You're Catholic.
I am actually Catholic. Remember, I'm obsessed with nuns, guys.
That's right.
So basically, the story becomes some version of we're following the cardinal who is in charge of running the conclave, running the vote to choose the next pope. And he is the one where, in some cases, secrets about some of those other candidates are revealed to him. And he sort of goes through the dilemma of, should he tell the rest of the voting parties about this new secret that he now knows?
Mm-hmm.
And this happens over the course of the film more than once. For example, one of the characters who is in the running, you find out that he actually had a love affair a few decades earlier in his life that led to a secret baby. Secret baby, Gossip Girl. And he decides whether or not this information should be known, knowing that it will sway the vote of some people in the room. Finally, we get just the end of the film to the person who is sort of most likely to be voted and is actually confirmed as Pope.
He wins the vote, but before they can confirm him. Yeah.
Ray Fiennes, who plays the leader of this conclave, finds out a secret about him. And then the question becomes, now that he's been confirmed, now that he's been chosen, should they be allowed to go through with the confirmation, or should they start the process over again and sort of disqualify everyone's choice for Pope? And that's where the movie sort of hits at that final Act 3 moment. And so it is one of those where we've just watched knowing that every single person in the conclave has some version of a human flaw, which is really the message of the film, right? Is that religion is idealistic, and yet everyone who is in power running this religion is a complete flawed human being. And so we sort of arrive at, as Mav would say, is this the lesser of the evils? Is it really an evil at all if everyone is flawed? Like some version of, should he selfishly keep this secret, or is it not selfish to keep this secret? And that's the trolley problem that we run to in Conclave, which is a movie that is most explicitly of all the films that we're going to talk about today, the one that is about morality, because it is about Catholicism and also the worthiness of running an entire religion based on morality, right?
Yeah.
So, spoilers.
So, are you going to tell what the major thing is? Yeah.
How are you going to play? What we're going to make Wayne and Katya decide what they would do?
Well, but see, the thing is, I know what they're both going to do because, like, well, go
Fate
ahead.
of the church is in your hands.
Yes.
I would save the nuns just to make Monica happy.
Yeah, we have to save the nuns for Monica.
Saving the nuns was an earlier issue.
Our plot twist is that our cardinal who has been chosen for Pope, we learn is intersex.
That was the big secret.
Seems fine.
Yeah, that was pretty much what I... I mean, but obviously...
I have questions about why they're okay being Catholic, but, that's fine.
That is addressed. Particular
it
character...
is some version of God made me this way.
Yes.
Sure.
And therefore I am perfect.
And that's kind of the lesson.
Why the Popehood, which, by the way, apparently is referred to as the papacy.
Yeah.
That's less cool than popeship. Continue.
I do like the popeship. I think we should initiate a movement to change it to the popeship.
The issue in this particular one is the Pope that they end up picking was like the least likely candidate for other reasons. Like he's a very young cardinal that most of them didn't even know about. He's like the last guy to show up. And yet everybody's just sort of, he seems to be a really nice guy. He's doing some good work trying to bring Catholicism to the Middle East and everything. And so they're like, yeah, okay, that guy. And then secretly it turns out that he is and has been secretly intersex the entire movie. And, this is crazily progressive for the Catholic Church.
Wait, do they know?
Okay.
Or is this like a
just
secret?
One guy knows. And that's the thing. The previous Pope knew, yes, but he's dead.
The previous Pope knew and arranged for this cardinal to have gender reassignment surgery.
Yes.
And this cardinal chose not to undergo the procedure.
At the last.
But it is unclear whether or not the previous Pope knew that the surgery had not.
Yes.
Okay.
But it doesn't matter because the previous Pope's dead now. So
yeah, sure. He real dead.
Yeah. You just shut up if you're the other cardinal. And he eventually decides that he will. He's just like, well, this guy is super qualified. He's going to make a really good Pope in every other possible way. So let's just see where the chips fall. But like the movie sort of is weird because like that's the end of the movie, right? So is this guy just going to secretly live as an intersex person for the rest of his life, just like he has been doing for the last 40, 50 years? Or is he going to usher in this new LGBTQ safe era of Catholicism? It's not clear. Like there's no reason to believe either of them because the movie just sort of ends and with yeah, okay, we're just gonna, you are as God made you. God doesn't make mistakes, so we're good. Like that's the end, I guess. It is weird. I think because I've seen people, some of the reviews of the film, which have all been vague because nobody wants to give away the ending, even though we just did, but you've had like a couple of months. And that's also really good, even if you know the ending. Like it is a very deeply insightful and well acted film. So I think it's worth watching, but some people were like, "Oh, that just felt tacked on at the end," and I think some people were uncomfortable, not with the subject matter, but with the whole intersex subplot is the last 15 minutes of a movie that's a couple hours long. It's there, like if you go, I mean, like there's, but it's, you know that he has secrets. But I defy you to figure out what it is ahead of time.
Like the reveal is very last minute, it sounds like.
Well, I thought he was going to be gay. I thought the reveal was going to be that he was either gay or he was transgender and had been all along. Intersex didn't occur to me because
my mom
it was just
did predict the movie, and I asked her how, and she said, "Well, he was the only cardinal with hair," which really blew my brain a little bit. One, because she's not wrong. He is the only cast member with hair when you think about the rest of this movie's stars. Stanley Tucci, also bald.
Yeah. Right. I don't know that I would jump to only person with hair must be intersex, but I applaud your mom for anticipating the ending.
Yeah, he's also like 40, whereas all the other actors are like 70. So
which I did bring up immediately, and I was like, this feels...
I mean, she's not wrong.
But she's not wrong.
That is so funny.
It did absolutely break me.
Yeah.
Which is what the trolley problem is supposed to do, right? It's supposed to leave me unsure how to respond.
So that's I guess that is the most recent.
I'm going to be talking about two more also recent movies using the trolley problem that I would argue Conclave is one that purposely puts the trolley problem at the end to put the impetus on the audience to think about what they would do. I think that if we're going to talk about the other film I really want to get into is Juror number 2, because that's one in which you know the trolley problem at the onset of the film, and you know some version that you will be watching a trolley problem movie at the beginning based on the tagline for the movie and the trailer. You just don't know what the actual moral conundrum is going to be, because the movie itself is described as this juror knows a piece of information that is sort of critical to whether the person on trial is guilty or not guilty.
Before we get too far into it, I want to apologize to Carlos Diaz, who plays the intersex Pope in the film. He's 53 years old. He looks fucking great. Oh my God.
That's a lot of hair for 53.
Yeah, that guy looks amazing. I didn't realize how, like, I just was just looking up all the actors.
Is it because everyone else in that movie is 80 that 50 is the new 40, or does he?
No, Lucian Masmati, who is the African cardinal. There's one main character who's black. I mean, there are other black characters in it, but he's the Nigerian candidate who could possibly win the popeship. He's 48. So he's just bald. So he's actually younger.
So he's the young one. Pope.
But they were actually, a lot of them are in their late 60s. Lithgow's in it. Lithgow's 79. So, Tucci is like 64. So they vary. But I just didn't realize, I mean, he's 55 years old for the guy for Carlos Diaz. So he's actually older than I thought. I would have thought he was like maybe 40. I thought he looks great. Okay. Oh, and just it has nothing to do with the morality problem, but just I think I might have mentioned it, something she missed. Isabella Rossellini's in it. Phenomenal in the film. So worth it in of itself.
And I will say, she has no problem telling secrets. She does not consider the trolley problem whatsoever.
No. Screw this. She's kind of great. All right, so Juror number 2, you want to tell us about it? Because I've not seen this, but I will watch it regardless.
So I really want to talk about Juror number 2, because, Mav, you're not the only person who hasn't seen this. Nobody has seen this movie, because it's just been absolutely buried.
Yes.
And honestly, had I watched it a week ago, it would have ended up on my things you missed list, because I think it's actually phenomenal. I will say, I'm going to own my bias. The movie is directed by Clint Eastwood. I love Clint Eastwood movies. Like, I know that feels very strange to be like, yes, I love the old white Republican knowing everything that you know about me. And I love Clint Eastwood movies.
How many threesomes does he put himself in this movie?
None, actually.
He's not actually,
He's not in the movie.
Yeah.
And I will say, the Clint Eastwood movies without Clint Eastwood, better. I'm also, like, I was a really big fan of Richard Jewell, which he did a few years ago, too. I think that Clint Eastwood's interest in having conversations that are about, like, fundamentally bad or unlikable or flawed people at the center of his films, or the ways that institutional structures can be critiqued at a larger scale in terms of things like the criminal justice system or the incarceration system or the media. I think that he has interesting things to say and really kind of pokes a stick at them in a way that I find interesting, because I do think that he still does a great job of towing that ambiguity, of letting you know that as a director, he thinks that these things have a problem, but he isn't necessarily giving you what he thinks is the solution to them. I will say is why Juror number 2 works so well for me as a trolley problem and works so well for me as a what would you do. So I mentioned sort of that there is this idea that juror number 2 in the trailer, you know that he is a juror who has a key piece of information for whether or not the accused will be tried guilty or not guilty. Now, the piece of information that you learn is actually very early on in the film. You learn that Nicholas Hoult, who plays juror number 2, is a recovered alcoholic. He goes to a bar one night, and the bar that he happens to be at, there's a couple arguing. And the couple arguing, the girl in the couple is actually the victim in the murder case, and her boyfriend is the accused. So it turns out, one, that he is actually a witness there at the night of that fight. And he does not realize that prior to being brought on and sworn in as a member of the jury. He doesn't want to admit to being in this bar because he is a recovering alcoholic. And even though he does not drink, on his way home, he gets into an accident where he thinks it's rainy, there's very low visibility. He thinks that he hits a deer because he knows that he's in an area with deer crossing. However, it also appears very much as if he could have possibly not hit a deer. And by not hit a deer, what I mean is that this girl who has been murdered, they find her off the road, very close to the bridge where he hit the deer. And so he has a worry that it's not actually the boyfriend who killed his girlfriend, but that he might have killed this girl accidentally by hitting her with his car.
Okay.
And the movie does not tell you whether or not he hit her until very late in the film.
So he's spending most of the time, do I want to come forward with this information, or do I want to chance this possibly innocent man going to jail for a crime that technically I committed?
Right. And because he does not know for sure,
right,
what he does is he asks the other jurors to think through the case a bit more critically, and sort of everyone in the case
11 angry minute
in the jury is convinced that he is guilty right away. And he says, whoa, wait a minute. Maybe let's look at the case a little bit more. And so he turns what would have been an hour-long jury process into a weeks-long jury process, in which everyone sits and looks at the case more critically from a bunch of other angles. Because he himself is not sure, is hoping that all of these other people will be able to sort of bring their own evidence and bring their own conclusions without him ever having to say anything other than, are you sure? In which then they are not just putting this other guy on trial, Nicholas Hoult, juror number 2, on trial in a way, for him to figure out if he is innocent or guilty, while he thinks about if he should bring this information forward, knowing that because he is a recovering alcoholic, nobody is likely to believe the fact that he did not have a drink at that bar. So he knows that he automatically becomes a suspect if he brings this information forward.
Okay. This sounds great.
Absolutely phenomenal movie in terms of the what would you do. And you do find out whether or not he hit her or not. I would say about 2/3 of the way through the film. And the film does shift.
But
those first 2/3,
the viewer knows.
No. It's not a Columbo, right? Like you do not know who did it until 2/3 of the way through.
So you find out with him.
You find out with him. You spend the first 2/3 of the film as unsure as he is. But the moral and ethical dilemma is, should he be continuing to let it just play out among the other 11 jurors sitting in the room with him? Because technically, when you think about the justice system, you're not supposed to know any of the other facts other than what was presented in the courtroom to you. And so he technically is withholding information that none of the other people would know anyway based on the case.
He's clearly
asking them to...
It would disqualify him.
He's clearly legally wrong. But the question
is legally wrong.
He's morally wrong, right?
He is not supposed to be part of this jury. But if he doesn't reveal any more information, is he morally wrong because all of the other jurors are still operating under the rules of a trial by jury?
Right.
That's interesting.
So this, I've been talking about, for the place I work, I've been talking about proposing this class that I wanted to call multimedia ethics as a kind of cultural studies class. And I kind of wanted to look at stuff like this. Is it ethically wrong? Sort of depends on what ethical system you subscribe to. And most people don't have hard and fast, D&D alignment style ethical systems. But
speak for yourself.
Where mostly most of us are a meshing of several of them, right? But I think one of the problems is people tend to behave as though there are universal ethics. The idea of universal ethics is that there exists some ethical principles, and it doesn't matter if they're all this way, but there at least exists some ethical principles wherein they're always wrong. So if you believe it is always wrong to kill under any circumstance, then you can be a universal ethicist. If you believe rape is always wrong under some circumstances, whatever, right? However, if you think that there's always some crazy amount of circumstances on some level where maybe there's an exception, then you have to theorize that there is some sort of moral relativism if you can find some exception anywhere, right? So one of the ones that people usually point to is, well, incest. I can say incest is always wrong. And it's sure, but what if you don't know? If you don't know, have you done some horrible thing? Well, if I didn't know, then, it becomes kind of hard, right? So then it can't possibly be universal. Now, does it mean that I should commit incest willingly? No, it can be relativistic. The reason I bring this up for this one is because I think for most of us, he is making poor decisions. But is he morally wrong if he's trying to save himself, or is he morally wrong because he's trying to get justice for this girl who's been murdered, right? Because what I'm wondering is, in this situation, if he determines halfway through the movie, oh yeah, it was me, I did it, the boyfriend is innocent and I'm the one who ran the girl over, then is he intending to turn himself in, or is he intending to go, oh fuck, it was me, well, it's a good thing I'm not on trial? Like that's where it becomes weird, right? Because I don't know.
I think it's and it's also so interesting because I don't know how the movie sets this up, but it sounds like him, even if he hits her with the car, it was an accident.
Right.
So I don't know. I don't know.
And he didn't run away from it, realize what he'd done and flee the scene. He simply
he genuinely thought he hit a deer.
Yeah.
Yes. I will be clear that won't tell you whether or not.
But he is not trying to cover up.
In the moment, he is not trying to cover up anything. He really, truly thinks that he hit a deer, and he gets out of his car and he looks around, and he does not see anything.
Okay.
So you do not know if he really truly hit her or really truly hit a deer.
Like towards the end of the movie.
Exactly.
I think it's becoming more of a question of, how, like, I don't know that it's a question of morality here for me, because like there's nothing bad happens morally. I mean, something bad might happen to him, but if the situation happens where you find this out and he's like, oh shit, I might have extra information, Your Honor, I need to speak to you immediately. All right, Your Honor, here's what's going on. I don't know what happened, but I cannot in good faith serve in this jury, and this information should go to the prosecutor and the defense so that they can investigate. That's clearly, I would say, the morally right and legally right thing to do. It just might not be the smartest thing to do. Like, because you might go to jail, right? That's why I'm not clear that it's a moral question in the same way as, say, Conclave, right? Because Conclave was different. Conclave was going, hey, I know that the new pope is holding a secret, but I also know the new pope is clearly the best person for the job of pope. So do I let the new pope hold on to a secret? That feels like a moral dilemma, whereas this feels like a intellectual dilemma.
I think it's a moral dilemma too, but I think that the difference is when you're talking about Conclave, you're holding someone else's like responsibility in your hands. And there is something interesting about juror number 2, because you're not just holding the accused who's on trial in your hands, you're also holding yourself in your hands. And in Conclave, there is sort of no worry about the like self-preservation, because Ray Fiennes within the film has already sort of said that he would like to retire after running the Conclave. Like, if he got demoted for some reason, that would kind of be fine with him, right? Like, that's his preference, is he wants to go like hang out with sheep for the rest of his life.
There's even a question in that film of people are like, hey, why don't you be new pope? And he's like, I don't want to be.
Right. Juror number 2, Mav, you're right, where you're like, how much of this is a question of like ethics versus how smart it is. But what you're actually saying is it's got nothing to do with how smart you are. It's should you do it because it is morally right versus for your own self-preservation.
Right.
Because if we are talking morals, you should say, hey, I need to excuse myself from this jury. Oh, why do you need to excuse yourself from this jury? Oh, because I'm a suspect. Right? Like, that is the quote unquote moral thing to do here. It's just that very few people would be able to turn themselves over to the justice system knowing that they are a suspect, especially when you don't know if you did or did not do the crime.
Right.
Right?
Yeah.
So it's the ability to fall on your own sword for another person in this case, right? And another person who we've kind of established is like has a history of domestic abuse, has a history of trouble with the law. And this other person who is on trial that you know is not necessarily morally, quote unquote, a good person.
Okay. We know he's an abusive asshole. He just might not be a murderer.
Exactly.
Gotcha.
So do you save yourself for someone who didn't do it, even though the person who didn't do it might have hit his girlfriend at some other point in time? He just didn't kill her. You don't know, right?
Right. Yeah, I see where they're going with it. I kind of want to see the movie because, but it still feels much more like an intellectual pursuit. I'm okay with watching movies about completely flawed. Like, there's no moral dilemma in Breaking Bad. Walter's just wrong. And yet it's fascinating television, right? So I'm okay with it not necessarily being a moral dilemma. I'm okay with it being an intellectual dilemma where it's like, hey, what's the smartest play here? What's the better way out? Is the better way out telling the truth here? Or is the better way out just letting the cards fall where they may and maybe I get away with murder? I still kind of want to see that unfold because I think Nicholas Holt's an amazing actor and I'll watch him do that.
Then do you think that under the criminal justice system, should somebody who accidentally hit someone with their car go to jail?
Well, that was kind of the thing why I brought it up. Is it's like it sounds like I haven't seen the film, but it sounds like he assumes he would be legally culpable. But I think like under the circumstances, I don't know that he would be if it's genuinely an accident. I think it just becomes could he substantiate that it was genuinely an accident?
Right.
Because it sounds
Yeah, I mean,
like
it would be
part of the dilemma.
yeah,
Yeah.
accidental manslaughter. That accidental is not the right word. Involuntary manslaughter.
Involuntary
Yeah.
manslaughter.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You're right. With the alcoholism thing, that came out, you know what? And,
Right.
and it's not like involuntary manslaughter is a good process to go through.
Right.
So it
And
sounds
also,
like he's absolutely trying to protect himself.
right. And also the second, I mean, basically, if he takes more than like 5 seconds to acknowledge the problem, then he's crossed point of no return, right? Like, because
Right.
an hour into the process, the judge is like, why the fuck didn't you say something an hour ago?
Yeah.
Like this is a 5 second question. Like, oh, well, that it was you. And any bit of, well, I was scared makes you sound guilty. So I think there's
Exactly.
that. So, yeah, I think it's, I don't have an answer for it. It sounds like a fascinating movie.
So we have determined that we would watch the Trolley Problem movie, right?
Sure.
I've basically determined, because originally we were like, why would anyone sit through one of these? I don't know. I just described it, and all three of you were like, yeah, I'd watch that.
Well, I think it's like an interesting. I am curious because you mentioned that like there seems to be like more of these than usual at the beginning of the episode, and I'm kind of curious as to like why do these feel like they're. I have some like initial gut theories, but like I wonder why like these seem.
I have a gut theory too.
Proliferating
Because we're living in an era of no good choice.
Yeah, the thing that I was thinking about is just like, you know, the first thing that came to mind was like climate change, right? There are a series of bad decisions about like, who is going, at this point especially, we've gone past several points of no return, although they keep moving the goalposts on that. And when we've passed the sort of point of no return, we know that there are going to be people that are going to be disproportionately affected by climate change. And the decisions that are made, or at this point, the lack of decisions that are made, feel almost Trolley problem-like in the sense that it's like, pull this lever, these people get screwed over, pull this lever, these people get screwed over, but someone's going to get screwed over no matter what.
Mm-hmm.
Like there is no utopian outcome anymore. Like that ship has sailed and maybe never really was a real thing.
I think I'm where Wayne was, or at least what I think you were saying, Wayne. It's where we have, at least in America, and actually much of the Western world, we've reduced our political system to, for many of us, maybe not for all of us, like some people probably honestly are massive fans of Donald Trump or honestly are massive fans of Joe Biden / Kamala Harris. But for many people, they have reduced politics to this concept of we are only going to pick people that we do not want because we feel like our person is the best compromise, better than the guy on the other side. There are, like, you're hard pressed to find a Democrat, a registered Democrat who is like, yes, Joe Biden, perfect president. Like, that just like everybody, even the people who vehemently supported Joe Biden were like, well, we had to stop Donald Trump. Like most people were like, he was the best option, and I didn't want it to be Bernie Sanders, or I didn't want it to be Pete Buttigieg, or I didn't want it to be, he was like all right, this guy, this will work.
The palatable compromise for a lot of people.
For a lot of people, and then once he was there, he's like, well, at least he's not Donald Trump. That's what that's what it is. And I think Trump certainly has some sycophant voters, right? Like many of them. But for a lot of the Republicans who voted for Trump, it was just like, well, Kamala Harris has to be stopped at all costs. So I guess we're going with our slimy rapist guy. Like that, like they actually made that calculus, which is gross. Like, and I mean, like, it's really easy for me because I have a life philosophy where I think being a racist rapist is bad. It's really easy for me to say no Donald Trump under any circumstance, right? But if I were a person who firmly and truly believed with the very fiber of my being that there were only two genders, that there were people trying to turn my kids transgender against their will, and that
abortion is murder, and so you're killing unborn babies. If I firmly and truly believe that, which I don't, then I understand how you might be like, fuck, I guess I got to vote for Donald Trump.
I mean, but just even moving outside of politics, it feels to me, and maybe this is me being an old guy, that lack of nuance in people's thinking, and I don't know if it's media or whatever, but it's just that whole, everything gets boiled down to an either or. Everything gets boiled down to a trolley problem. And if you see the world in black and white terms, whatever it is, and then the only options you're presented, the only ones you can see are bad ones,
right?
It becomes really easy to become radicalized to one side or the other.
Or disassociate, I think, from the entire problem.
Yeah, right. Just say, fuck it, I'm done. It doesn't matter which bunch of people we kill because somebody's going to get killed. Metaphorically. I think it's a release of responsibility. I'm not going to make a decision here. I think a lot of people do that.
I think that's regarding the apathy, I think that's it's like on the one side you get radicalized because there are no good decisions. On the other side, I think even in the last election, so many people like opted out because there are no good choices. And so I think it goes in all the ways.
Yeah, and I think a lot of times if people are only presented with two choices, if they view the world through an either or, it prevents doing, and I'm going to use a Star Trek reference, it prevents the Kobayashi Maru. It prevents you from seeking other solutions that aren't this one or that one. It stops you from even pursuing creative thinking to try to find another.
Well, and also politically, and I think this is sort of wrapping back towards our films here. Politically, we've created this world where the people who believe in those two solutions, in either solution on the other side, have created a world where they really, really try really hard to tell you that any other solution is unviable. I've hated this. I've always hated this my entire voting life. I've been voting for 30 something years now, right? I do not skip elections, so this is not me. But like, I know people who will say, "Oh, well, you're a vote for Jill Stein. Jill Stein just ran a Screen Party. A vote for Jill Stein might as well be a vote for Donald Trump." No, it's not. It's not the same thing. Well, but you're throwing your vote away. No, you're not. If you fundamentally believe in Jill Stein's message, then you should vote for her. And to tell people that they shouldn't creates this binary problem, because if someone, like, I understand the mentality of saying, no, Donald Trump needs to be stopped at any cost. I understand how people might feel that way, but not everybody believes in you. And what you're essentially doing is telling people that their priorities are not as important as your priorities. So you better step in line and think the way that I want you to do. It's the thing where people blame, to this day, I know a lot of people who blame Ralph Nader for Al Gore losing the election.
Yeah.
No, he didn't. Like, that's not how this works. Or blaming Jill Stein or Bernie Sanders for Hillary Clinton losing. Or you could blame Hillary Clinton for not doing enough. I mean, like no one is owed a vote. So we have this situation where we've created a fantasy in our real politics of there are only two decisions. And so I think that maybe our media is reflecting this fantasy, right? Like, our media wants to delve into this world of, oh my God, there are only bad options. It's got to be, there is no good pope, so who are we going to pick? There is no good legal option, so who are we going to pick? I think that's what we're doing with our media, because media's got to reflect it.
I want to go one step further when we talk about it reflecting our times, because for the audience, before we started recording, we started brainstorming other options where this happened. And I was like, isn't there very explicitly some like Batman and Spider-Man plots where our trolley problem is literally a subway car or like a New York cable car full of people? And Mav, you said, yeah, but Spider-Man and always gets to save both, right? And I think that the reason that this is so interesting or feels so different right now is because there is no save both option. Like, we are talking about films that very explicitly you have to pick one or the other, and there is no idealized version where you get to have your cake and eat it too in any way, right?
But that's the difference between the Spider-Man and the Batman message. So the Batman message is Batman is the guy who's willing to make the hard choice. That's who Batman is. Batman is the guy who is, oh my God, sometimes the hard choice is someone's got to make this hard choice, and Superman's not going to do it. So Batman is there. Batman is your guy, right? The entire Spider-Man story is no, I do not accept your reality where everybody loses. I will Kobayashi Maru this somehow. The only person who Spider-Man is willing to ever let lose is himself, right? Spider-Man will do whatever it takes to figure out how to save both the trolley and the guy on the tracks. Like, I don't know how I'm going to do it, but I'm going to figure it out. And that's any Spider-Man, right? Like the plot to the most recent Spider-Verse movie is basically Miles is told you can save everybody or you can save your dad. And he's like, no, I'm going to save both. And it ends up trapping them in another dimension, but I'm going to find a way to save both. The heroic sacrifice is only I lose. And that's kind of what the Spider-Man lesson is. I don't know that that's necessarily possible in real life, but like it's what James T. Kirk does, right? That's why we call it the Kobayashi Maru. Like the Kobayashi Maru is you are supposed to pick between two unpalatable options, but the question is, how do you decide? And the scope of a good leader is, can a leader decide, or does a leader get frozen and doom us all? And Kirk's thing is, no, a leader reprograms the system and just makes it so everybody wins, and which is against the rules, but he does it.
Yeah, he cheated, right?
Which do we need more cheaters? Is that like the Kobayashi Maru lesson?
Right. I was going to say, is then the morality to rewrite the system? Is that what we're saying? I mean, it is interesting that you are saying that, because in these two films, like, we are talking about the Catholic Church and the U.S. justice system, right? Which I think we are all very willing to admit are incredibly flawed institutions that probably do need some version of an overhaul or a rewrite. But these are also films that in no way ever propose what that solution should be.
Well, because in both of those cases, those systems are so large, monolithic. Change happens. The Catholic Church is not the same thing it was in the Dark Ages, and our justice system is not what it was back when we were hanging people in courtyards. But
there's still a constitution and there's still a Bible, and it's slow.
Well, okay, so maybe
it changes. I do think though that rewriting the system takes place, but it takes place over epochal time.
100 years. Yeah.
Okay, so maybe I want to bring in my third trolley problem, my third movie. Ooh, what a wonderful transition. And it is because it is also a movie that is kind of about the Catholic Church and kind of not about the Catholic Church, and kind of in that contemporary era, but not quite that contemporary era. And so I mentioned Small Things Like These as being one of my things you might have missed pieces this year. And that is a film that is about the Irish Magdalen laundries, which I don't know if that's something that anyone has familiarity with, but essentially the Magdalen laundries were originally set up as a type of home for unwed mothers and children, but expanded over time to also include things like orphans or children who otherwise might have been abandoned by their parents or placed into some version of a foster care system, for some version of a bit like a juvenile hall for young women, etc. So sort of these women who are seen as quote unquote misbehaved or burdens to society in some way are taken on by nuns, Irish nuns, and they are brought to work in the Magdalen laundries, which is a sort of like literal laundry service that like services the town. And it is essentially slave labor that goes on until about the 90s in Ireland. So this is a practice that essentially exists for again, decades past what we usually think of as sort of the like horrific medieval abuses of the church, right? And it becomes very much this thing that is a bit of a like quiet secret where you know that something immoral is happening within the laundries, but because the church has so much power over the town, there's sort of very little ability to speak out against it. Because in a lot of cases, the church might also be in charge of the only school in the area, right? So if you spoke out against it, then your children would not be able to go to school. And that's what this book and film adaptation are about in particular, is a man, he has 5 daughters, he supplies the coal to the town. So while the rest of the county might be sort of struggling financially, the fact that everyone does need a fuel source means that they're sort of firmly middle class within the town, able to have this security of workload. And one of the places that he does deliver to are these laundries. And so therefore is afforded a little bit more access than the average person might in order to actually see what sort of goes on behind closed doors. The film stars Cillian Murphy, and it is about his decision as to whether or not he should help any of the girls or children who are sort of asking him for a way out of the laundry, while also knowing that if he is to do so, that he's also sort of pitching his own family and his own daughters into educational and financial precarity or ruin, right? And so it is sort of the, in this case, the reverse of the trolley problem, where saving the one outside person would actually doom trolley family, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so then that's one that becomes even a bit more complicated in terms of, is there morality in saving the one over the many?
Yeah. I mean, a classic version of this is, and this is the universality thing before, is there something that's always wrong, right? Like, do you allow one evil act in order to allow a million good acts? You know, it's the should Batman kill the Joker, right? Like, Batman doesn't kill the Joker because that would be crossing a line, except that, would it though? Because it feels like if the Joker is absolutely going to kill millions of people, then aren't you just being selfish by trying to keep your own personal slate clean or whatever Batman's doing?
Well, and not to be Star Trek guy on that, but the needs of the many outweigh the needs
I was
of
just
the
thinking
few.
that.
Right. Yeah, exactly.
And vice versa. It's that problem. Which is probably saying I learned all my morality from Star Trek.
I mean, there's worse places.
I'm gonna worse places because I'm gonna use Torchwood, right? I don't know if anybody's ever watched Torchwood. Torchwood's a spinoff of Doctor Who. But I want to say Torchwood Children of Earth, which is the 3rd season of the Torchwood TV series, and it was the final for a while until they just like a couple of years later decided, oh no, we'll make one more. And I really like Torchwood, but the plot to Torchwood season 3 is, for varying reasons, basically the world's doomed unless one child is sacrificed. And Jack, the main character of Torchwood, decides to sacrifice his own grandson. Essentially, in order to save the world, you have to throw some child into a furnace, so he's like, well, if I'm going to sacrifice one child, then it'll be mine. It's not really his, it's his daughter's, but he just basically takes his own grandson and he allows his own grandson to die because it would be wrong to allow anybody else's child or grandchild to die. And, you know, he does that knowing that his daughter will now hate him forever. Because obviously, but also he had to save the world. It is the darkest thing ever. So Wayne, you've obviously seen it. I don't know if anybody else has, but you get to the end of this series and it's just it's there's only 5 episodes of that season. And it's just the 5th episode ends with him basically killing his own grandson. And then you're just like, holy shit, this is dark. And his rationalization is literally everyone was going to die. Like there was no way for everyone to live, and I had to choose one person to die, so I chose one. And it was the one that meant the most to me personally, because his logic was he would hate himself, but if he ruined life for anybody else other than himself, he would have hated himself more. It's just so dark. But like,
I mean, it sounds a lot like the Ursula Le Guin, Those Who Walk Away from Omelis, right? Because the idea is that everyone gets to live in utopia as long as one single child is tortured endlessly underneath. And the fact that everyone in the town is okay with that because utopia.
right.
And I think very much the message of that story is supposed to be that all of those people are terrible because they're choosing to torture a child. But I guess what we're learning is that a lot of us wouldn't make that conclusion. A lot of us would say, torture that child.
Yeah. Well, utopia feels different than living. Yeah. Go ahead.
Yeah. Now, one of the subplots in Wicked and Divine that I've talked about is the character Baal has been convinced by Ananke that he needs to murder children to keep away the great darkness. Darkness will destroy the world. And every 4 months, he murders a child because that will keep it at bay for another 4 months. Right. He is convinced to do this for what he believes the greater good, and ends it. Spoilers for the thing. Part of the plot is at the end, to convoluted sci-fi fantasy stuff, he is going to sacrifice full of people to end the great darkness in forever. Now, what he doesn't know is he's been lied to. Great darkness.
It's all lies. Yeah.
It's all lies. And it's a case of, in this book, he is in ways a good man who has been corrupted to do this really, really horrible, appalling thing because he believes he's saving the world. So that's probably the problem. Do I murder a child to keep the world alive?
And if you don't, then you're responsible for everybody dying. So isn't that worse? It's so. I mean,
and he in the plot, when he was planning on killing the stadium full of people in the great darkness forever, one of the people he invited to the concert was his mother, knowing she would die because he didn't want her to know what he had done.
Which dark.
Yeah.
Just a skosh,
So I don't think fictional problems create real problems, right? Like I don't think people are going to read this and go, "Oh, perfect. So okay to murder." That's not. But I do think I think the attraction to media like this is because we feel so hopeless in life, right? Like, so if you're an actual philosophy scholar, a lot of them hate the trolley problem because it's become too famous, and it is just one very simple abstraction that like falls apart if you think about it for more than 2 seconds of, no, this is there's so many problems with the trolley problem. But like,
oh, so it's the Bechdel test of philosophy. Is that what we're saying?
It very much has Bechdel test problems. Our friend Michael Burns from Wisecrack will tell you he hates it. It has tons of Bechdel test problems, but also the Bechdel test is interesting, right? Like I get frustrated about the Bechdel test as a cultural theorist because I'm like, no, this is so stupid. But like I have to acknowledge that it has made people think about something that they wouldn't otherwise think about. And, following a thought experiment can lead you to interesting discussions. And I think that maybe that's kind of like a trolley problem makes for a good movie. It makes for a good story. It makes for good storytelling opportunities when somebody learns to Kobayashi Maru it, because then you've got he found a way to beat the trolley problem. That's clever. Even though there's tons of stories where you beat the trolley problem. Wayne knows one of my favorite all time ones is the Hawkeye moment in the Contest of Champions, right? Which is like it's a comic book where basically Captain America and Hawkeye are told that in order to save the universe, they've got to fight 100 heroes, and they're just two regular guys. And Hawkeye says, or we can do it on this game of chance, and he basically offers a 3-card Monty game to the Grandmaster for the fate of the universe. And Cap's like, are you crazy? And Hawkeye's like, yeah, but like we're not going to win. So this gives us a 50-50 chance he's going to do 2 arrows behind his back. And, and if the Grandmaster picks the right hand, then the world ends. And if he picks the wrong hand, the world gets to live. And Cap's like, you're going to put this on a game of chance. Hawkeye's like, yes, absolutely. And then Hawkeye wins, and so the world is saved. And then later Cap's like, what would you have done if he'd picked the correct hand? And Hawkeye's like, he did pick the right hand. And he shows that he palmed the arrowhead. And Cap's like, you cheated. And Hawkeye's like, of course I cheated. What are you talking about? The universe was on the line. He's like, what's wrong with you? He goes, you think I was going to be a Boy Scout like you and play fair? It's like, no, the answer is the universe was on the line, and Hawkeye is a carny. And he's like, I have one skill that is going to win me here. And he fixed the game because that was more interesting. And it was fine to cheat in the game in order to save the universe. And it's just a lovely answer to this problem. He's like, yes, I cheated. End of story.
One of the reasons he's one of my favorite Marvel characters.
Yeah.
I'm really receiving a childhood flashback that I didn't know was in there, because I distinctly remember growing up at the Renaissance Fair doing all of our like little in the round combat. One of the recurring chants was cheat to win. Cheat to win. So I think that is actually what I morally learned as a small child.
I don't know. I mean, I think the question of why watch these is the same as the question of why do any media, right? I think that they're interesting stories. And so you used ones that where the trolley problem wasn't obvious. It was revealed at the end, or it was revealed through the course of the thing. I would also offer the film Carry On, which just came out. We talked about that on the Christmas episode, where Carry On is this movie. It's a Die Hard ripoff, but the movie's premise is you're a TSA agent, and like some guy calls you and says, we've got a gun pointed at your wife's head. Let the next guy through with a bomb, or we're going to execute your wife. So what do you do? And the answer is you let the guy through. It's like the first 5 minutes in the movie. It's like, no, we're going to shoot your wife right now, or you can let a bomb into the airport. And the guy's like, well, I guess my wife's going to live. You know? So, and then there's more to it than that. Like, he feels guilty, and he spends like much of the movie trying to save everybody. But like the trolley problem issue is solved really, really quickly. Do you love, 10,000 random strangers, or do you love your wife? I love my wife. End of story. So, I mean, which I guess is probably what most people would do. which is why we have like rules about like the president or whatever. You're supposed to recuse yourself in certain situations if it involves like a family member. Like a judge cannot hold a trial over their spouse because that's an obvious conflict of interest. So
have we solved completely nothing?
Yes,
I guess.
It makes for interesting conversation.
Yeah,
I think we like being presented with those types of things. The what would you do? The what situation. Those of us like questioning our own morality, our own choices, and that sort of thing. I think not everybody does, obviously.
See, I don't know. I think that we like watching it specifically because somebody else has to deal with the difficulty.
Yeah.
Right? Like, I don't think that there is any part of me that's like, wow, I would really love to be Juror too. Right? Like, right. I think that I feel a sense of relief that I am not Juror 2. I feel a sense of relief that I know that I am Juror 1, 3 through 12.
Well, I think that's maybe part of it, though, is it's like catharsis. Yeah, I was about to say, it's like I think there's kind of in the same way of like classical catharsis. Like I think there is a value in like you have the like vicarious experience of having the liberation, but it's from a standpoint of like total safety. Like nothing bad is going to happen to you because you can turn the TV off afterwards. But you can still kind of have the deliberation of like, will you, won't you kind of thing. I mean, I was at a game night earlier this week, and there was a what would you do in this scenario kind of like thing, or what would your friend do in this scenario, you have to guess kind of deal. And they were mostly like very silly, like, would you commit tax evasion if for some reason the federal government thought you were a dog because reasons. But like, even the fact that like there are so many like card games, board games, I think like video games we were talking about before the episode, like this is like a common trope in video games too. Like I think we enjoy like kind of like LARPing philosophical dilemmas on some, or at least some of us do. And I think the process of like watching other people go through it, or maybe like doing this kind of what we're doing in this episode of like what would we individually do in these scenarios, like I don't know, it's like I think it is like cathartic in some way, or at least like gives you some kind of perspective, particularly as we're living through this moment where like there are no good options. Well, any enjoyment of fiction, we are projecting ourselves into these characters, and we want an adventure. We're glad we're not getting shot at by whoever. It's thrilling to watch. Those people have very normal, staid lives and are jonesing for some excitement. Don't really want it to happen, but we'll watch 2 hours of it. I mean, I think about this with video games too. It's like most, like for example, like many, if not most gamers, at some point will play like a first-person shooter. Very few people are interested in actually shooting a person, but we play it all the time. Well, and that forced choice kind of thing, these two bad decisions for so many people, the hardest that gets. And I don't mean to downplay how important it is in people's lives, but it's, do I pay the gas bill or the electric bill this month because I don't have money for both? And deciding whether or not you're going to go to jail for killing somebody or putting it on somebody else, there's a sense of perspective that comes with that. At least I'm not making that decision.
Right. Well, I think you always get this sense of superiority because you can safely say you would have done the other thing, right? Like it. It's really, I think, comforting to be able to watch a juror number 2 and say, well, I would have done better, or to watch Carry On say, I would have stood up to the terrorists. No, you wouldn't have. If a guy had a gun to your wife's head, you would have caved. Like, and I don't mean that like in a bad way. I think most of us would, right? Like, given the actual situation. There was a meme a while back that I saw that like I thought was really, really fascinating. It was a Harry Potter thing, and there's some article that was going around where people were complaining that if you think about it, Harry Potter doesn't make any sense because any reasonable person wouldn't have ended up with some random fangirl who liked you, Jenny. You would have chosen Hermione, the person who had stuck with you your entire life and stood by you toe to toe. And I remember reading that and going, no, you wouldn't. Like, you absolutely, like, that's not what people do in real life. In real life, you marry, like, I mean, I understand that she's his best friend or one of his best friends, but 2 problems. First off, she doesn't like him like that. Like, she's not interested in Harry, but also, he's a 17-year-old boy, and who do you want? Do you want the girl who's been hanging out with you since you were a kid, or do you want the girl who worships the ground you walk on? I will take the one who worships me. I'm 17, right? Like that's that's what you like they were saying, of course I would have chosen Hermione. I'm like, no, I think that's easy to say when you're reading the book through foresight because you feel like you can say this is the better choice. You found a way to safely choose the other option or to choose the same option, right? Like it's when we're given a morality play of impossible choices, and it does or doesn't work out, we can feel a little superior by just feeling like we could have done better, even though realistically, in the kinds of high pressure choices that we're talking about, like, I don't want to be in charge of choosing a pope.
Right.
And I probably wouldn't know what to do.
I kind of do.
Yeah, and
I want to put the little red smoke in the chimney, guys. That looks so fun.
I think the good news here for Mab is you probably will never find yourself in that.
Yeah,
probably.
We'll see. I've ended up in weirder places in life. Same. So this is the last Vox Pop of the year. So join us next year when we choose the new pope. That would be
yes.
It's I don't know. This has been a great year, and thank you for giving us an interesting topic to end on, Monica.
I hope it wasn't too much of a downer to think through moral dilemmas, but instead maybe it feels like I don't know the way to approach the new year with a new outlook, right?
Well, see, and that's it. I just said it's been a great year, but no, it's actually been a really shitty year. But like, I've enjoyed this show, so I think that's successful because I've said this before. Like, I love doing our podcast because it's an hour and a half out of my week every week where I can, talk to my friends and our guests, about, dumb pseudo academic stuff that like I find interesting, and I love this show. And so thank you guys for giving me yet another year of it, and then thank everybody for who's listening for listening. This is
yep.
So
warm fuzzies for everyone. For real.
He's gonna break the online side any moment.
Yeah, well, no, but what I will say is since the other show is shorter, also thank you to everyone who has watched my silly little movie review show with my niece, because that's been fun to do. That's my other thing. That show's only 15 minutes long, and it's been, if you haven't noticed, it's been for the last couple of weeks, it's been in the Vox Podcast stream on audio, and I've put them on YouTube where you can watch us talk about movies. So far, we've done The Book of Life, and then we did Die Hard, which was the Christmas episode. So thank you to everybody who's been watching those, and please continue to like and subscribe to those. Thumbs up them; they're fun, and it gives me, much like I get to talk to you guys, once a week about academic stuff. I'm enjoying talking to my 14-year-old niece about pseudo academic movie pursuits. It's fun. So it's been so cool. So thank you. And if you haven't checked it out, please do check that out. Anyway, Monica Marvelous, anything you want to plug?
No, not yet. I tried to make Letterboxd happen. Nobody joined me. I don't know that I've posted anything on Instagram. I should be studying. I have a lit review due tomorrow in podcast time, travel time. So don't talk to me. Have a good year. Happy New Year.
Katya, what about you?
I still prefer to communicate through smoke signals and various other Luddite means. So I will plug nothing.
It would be awesome if you actually did that. I would love if you were like literally like, no, please stay in touch with me via smoke signal.
Hey, I'm making progress befriending the local crows, and if anyone has ever been to Portland, Oregon, you know that there are crows fucking everywhere. So maybe one day I can plug crow mail.
Oh, there you go.
Exactly. Wayne, what about you?
So I don't know if I've mentioned before, I did start a Blue Sky account. My full name, Matt Wayne Wise, with all the other, whatever the rest of it is. Don't expect a lot of content from me, but I'm there.
Yeah, well, me too. So as always, you can find me on Instagram, Facebook, or Blue Sky. Technically Twitter and Threads, but I haven't posted to either of them in a long time. And Twitter, like I didn't actually cancel my Twitter. But I'm just there watching the world burn. I'm not really interacting anymore. I'm just watching it burn to the ground. But you can follow the show. Some of those places, we're on Facebook, Twitter, and Blue Sky at Vox Popcast. You can follow the show's blog at www.voxpopcast.com, where we post about whatever we're going to be talking about next week, which I believe is probably, don't hold me to it, but I believe it's going to be the fabled movie box office game, which should be exciting, and we'll see. Who's gonna win the box office game? It could be anybody. We don't know. It's coming towards a photo finish. So tune in next week to see who won that.
I'm gonna suggest sometime between now and then send out some links where I can read anything about what's coming out next year, because I know one movie.
Fine. But anyway, so there you go.
Which explains my standings in this year's.
You don't know. It could be anybody. Maybe Wayne's going to take this year. We will see. We don't actually technically we don't know how the box office game turned out as we record, but because there's as you listen to this,
I've got 3 days. I got 3 days.
To make like $1 billion. That's right.
We do have legitimately like 5 movies that came out this week.
Yeah.
But anyway, if you enjoyed the show, and we certainly hope you do, then please subscribe to us on iTunes or Pandora or Spotify or wherever the hell you get podcasts from. And and YouTube. I'm seriously, we'll see how long I can keep it going, but I'm gonna try to post the show to YouTube more often. Usually it's like a day later than it comes out on the podcast feed. It depends on how much time I have to edit the show. Editing a video podcast is a lot harder than editing an audio podcast. But if you enjoy the show, and we certainly hope you do, subscribe to us on iTunes, Pandora, Spotify, YouTube, wherever you get podcasts from, and do us a favor, leave us a 5-star review. That really helps us out, especially if you leave us a 5-star review on iTunes, Apple Podcasts. That gooses the algorithm, makes us more popular, and makes me feel all warm and fuzzy inside. I would like to thank Maximilian of Vault Form Music for our epic theme song, building ever so more epically and playing us out. I'd once again like to thank all of my co-hosts for joining me all year. I'd like to thank you for listening, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
Bye.
Bye.